Hi, welcome back to FreeThinking Ministries, a podcast where we want to help people think reasonably by applying logic and sound theology to all aspects of life. I am your host, Josh Klein. It's just going to be me today. And this is a bonus episode. I am going to be reacting to someone named J.P. Sears. And if you don't know who he is a conservative comedian and sketch artist. And he recently released this video sketch poking fun at Erika Kirk and her reaction to her husband, Charlie Kirk's assassination, and it has been receiving a lot of response. So here's just a little bit of it if you haven't seen it. This is just a little bit of what's going on.
First and foremost, my heart obviously is broken for you guys.
For us, what about her? Did she know Charlie was her husband?
Honor him by doing that. We're going to stay humble.
Oh, yeah. Well, she's really focused on business.
So blessed. And honor.
Hey, man, do you think it's weird that she's leading us now?
No, not at all. That's Charlie's wife. What are you talking about?
She has no background in leading significant nine-figure organizations. Her background is seeking fame through reality TV shows and beauty pageants.
So that's the sketch. And it received a lot of pushback. But that's not the video I'm actually reacting to today. Instead, I want to look at the follow-up video he made explaining why he won't apologize and why he made that video. And look, I like JP in a lot of ways. I think he's funny. I've always found him to be entertaining. My colleague Tim Stratton, he loves him. In fact, when I texted him I was going to maybe do this video, he was like, make sure you say how much I love JP Sears, even if you're going to critique him. So as JP would say, though, we're supposed to call balls and strikes. And I want to share how people like JP can manipulate you without you, or perhaps even him, knowing it. So we're going to take a look at a few clips from his explanation video. I do encourage you to go watch the whole thing to make sure I'm not taking things out of context.
To Joel, thank you for the comment. By the way, with negative comments, you won't find me bashing them. Like, let me character assassinate that guy that I've never heard of. Or you'll see some prominent people. I have heard of you. In fact, I know you. Let me character assassinate you. No, I'm all like free speech. And thank you for telling me what you think. I haven't seen all the negative comments. I've gone through some.
So I want you to hold on to that right now. He's not going to character assassinate the people in the negative comments. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. First, I want to talk about how he's all pro-free speech. That's fine to be all pro-free speech, but JP, just like you said in your video, pro-free speech doesn't mean there's not going to be consequences. It's not that we're asking the government or people are asking the government to intervene with your sketch video. That's not the way it is. Even ascribing motive is free speech. So I respect that he said this in his reaction video if it were true, but it's not true. It's not true. He is going to character assassinate. Hold on to that segment of the video. We'll come back to it in a little bit. But right now, we're going to take a look at his critiques of Erika Kirk.
After she's displayed a history of fame-seeking behavior. Now, what I have not seen in her history is having any sort of experience or qualification running, I believe, nine-figure organizations. That's what Turning Point USA is. I have seen zero qualifications for that, yet she's doing that.
Well, here's the thing, though. Sears, you haven't seen that, but that doesn't make it true that she's not qualified. According to multiple people within the TPUSA organization, Erika was in lockstep with Charlie at the top. She knew everything. She knew how it ran. She knew Charlie's plans for the future, and he wanted her to be in charge if something ever happened to him because he knew that she would carry it forward in the way that he would like. Now, you might not agree with that, but calling it fame-seeking behavior ignores all of these data points, or at least dismisses them. That's not to say being on reality shows or beauty pageants or whatever isn't some sort of cringy behavior in the past. Perhaps it is, but this is treating somebody like a static individual, like she hasn't quote unquote grown up, like she's just been waiting in the wings to fame seek. And maybe that's why she married Charlie in the first place. I don't know exactly what JP's saying here, but what he is saying out loud is that Erika has zero qualifications. He says that in his sketch video as well. And that's just not necessarily the case. It seems to be, to me, that she clearly has the qualifications that TPUSA wanted. Now, you can question whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. That's fair. That's all up for debate. But to just say, well, she should have never been, that's just throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Next piece of weird behavior, she's immediately very dedicated to that after Charlie's death. She's very immediately on video, very immediately on stage, very immediately running corporate calls that are very lopsided in the sense of, hey, we're celebrating metrics like merch sales, hat sales, event numbers, donors, and very light on the, oh yeah, grieving the loss of Charlie.
Because Erika took over Charlie's organization, she has to also display all of her grieving to her employees all of the time, especially in meetings. Never mind the fact that celebrating those things like the memorial service and merch, even merch, could mean that she has seen Charlie's legacy explode in real time right after his death, and that brings her hope amidst her grief. But it couldn't be that, right? Now, she must be a power-hungry, fame-hungry woman who isn't actually grieving the death of her husband. She needs to grieve publicly, out loud, the way that we want her to. Now, when I was in youth ministry, a girl in our ministry tragically lost her father. It was sudden, and it was literally right before Christmas. I think like 2 days before Christmas. And she grieved. Oh, did she grieve? And we did as a church, as a congregation, we grieved. But guess what? She also found times in the midst of that grief in the following months to laugh and have fun amidst all of that grief where she desperately missed her father. Especially in public settings, she would find the time for joy. In fact, she didn't want to constantly be reminded of her grief when she was in public, when she was with her friends, when she was with people. And one of the ways this young woman grieved was through humor. She liked, these kind of morbid jokes and humor. And I'll never forget one time right after youth group, a mere month or so after her father's passing, when we were standing and talking. It was me and her and then another girl in this big room, and we were talking and we were having this conversation, and she cracks a dead dad joke. She cracks a dead father joke, and the other young lady was appalled. She goes, I'll never forget, she goes, "You can't say something like that," to the young lady who lost her father. And I looked at this young lady who said that, and I said, actually, she's the only one that can say that. So here's the thing. Be wary of grief police, especially with public individuals. Remember that the public persona is probably not the personal persona, at least, especially in the settings of the meetings. Well, that was a weird tone for a meeting. She's doing the best she can at the moment. Does it seem weird to some people? Sure. But remember that Martin Luther King Jr.'s grieving widow took up his mantle after his assassination as well. And I get that JP and others seeing Erika's public behavior might not understand it. They might find it weird. They might be like, that's not how I would act, even though they don't actually know how they would act in that situation. They don't know that. They just know how they would prefer Erika act. And that's something different. That's on them. That's a them problem. That's not a her problem.
Now, there's one more weird thing that's at least as weird as all of that. And I'll save that. I'll share that with you when I tell you the common denominator I see with a lot of people who are trying to crucify me. So stay tuned for that.
Okay, trying to crucify you. And I get kind of sick of this, honestly. Can I say it? Like, people are mad at your video. They're not literally trying to crucify you. They're not trying to crucify you. And I get that you're using a figure of speech, but it's just kind of silly. But hold on to that common denominator talk. Remember, what's the common denominator? Just wait. And remember what he said earlier. He's not going to character assassinate people that disagree with him. He's going to appreciate it. Yeah, he likes their free speech. He said that earlier. So just hold on to that.
So I mentioned earlier how she voluntarily stepped into the role of massive fame and spotlight. That comes with something. It comes with, whatever your behavior, whether it's just weird because that's how you are, or it's weird because there's something weird going on, you stepped into the position of a spotlight. People who call balls and strikes, they're going to talk about you. Like, I'm in a position of a spotlight. Thus, people have every right to talk about me.
Okay, and actually, I think this is fair. Yes, she's decided to become a public figure. She knew that, and thus people do have a right to discuss what she's doing. The debate, though, is not necessarily that. It's whether or not those discussions are being done in good taste or not. That doesn't mean you have the right. That doesn't mean you don't have the right to say the thing. But it does mean if you say the thing that you want to say and it's deemed horrific, you're going to and ought to get called out. So let's get into the crux of the matter, shall we? Let's get into what he really thinks is going on here.
Here's what I see as a common denominator with the majority of them. I can't say all for sure, but a common denominator is they are, this is all conservatives, but they're conservatives who are kind of what we might call Israel first conservatives relative to America first conservatives, or like Zionists is another way to say this. As this commenter pointed out, this is Christian Zionist ideology. And just using Seth Dillon as an example, he's incredibly pro-Israel. Here you can see, this was just from a few days ago, the Israel guys. Honored to meet Seth Dillon, culture warrior and CEO of the Babylon Bee at the Generation Truth Conference in Jerusalem this week. So that tells you he's very pro-Israel, and that's his prerogative. Here's what's interesting. So are most people crucifying me.
You see that? Now, I want to go back earlier to what he said at the very beginning. Now, remember, he's probably scripted this video out. He said, I'm going to get to this later. It's the classic strategy of trying to get people to stick through the whole video. But I want to go back to what he says at the very beginning.
You'll see some prominent people. I have heard of you. In fact, I know you. Let me character assassinate you. No, I'm all like free speech.
Well, I mean, now you might say, no, he's just pointing out that there's this different ideology. It's pro-Israel. It's whatever. But, you know, it's not quite that. And we'll get to that a little bit later. You'll have to stay through to get to that. And look, I just did it as well just now. You have to stay through to the end to get through that. But let's keep going to the rest of the conversation, because he makes some claims about Charlie that I think he thinks are lock, stop, obvious, that I think are debatable.
Now, remember how I said there was one more weird thing about Erika Kirk, and this ties into it beautifully. Little context for the one more weird thing about Erika Kirk. You've probably seen the text messages and things coming out, very documented, like not conspiracy theory, but very well documented. Before Charlie's death, he's literally telling a friend, I fear Israel will kill me. He's literally on the phone with Netanyahu saying, no, I won't accept your $150 million. You've seen the text. He's turning down, or he's losing Jewish donors, millions of dollars, because Charlie says, I can't do this Israel cause no matter what stuff anymore. It's not working. I don't believe it.
Okay, so there's a lot of claims there, and I want to get through them really quickly. Did Charlie text someone that he was afraid Israel was going to kill him? Well, I know he texted Frank Turek that he knew people wanted to kill him. He texted others that people wanted to kill him, saying, I know they want to kill me. But it's Sears and people like Candace Owens who insert Israel into that conversation. Well, that must be who he's talking about. Now, I may be wrong. Maybe I missed something, but I'm pretty sure there's not verified texts that from verified text at all, or even recently before his assassination, that says Charlie was afraid of Israel specifically killing him. The second claim is that Charlie had a phone call with Bibi Netanyahu refusing $150 million. But we have zero credible text messages, reports of that specific interaction. We do, however, have the letter that Charlie wrote Netanyahu in May of 2025. That's only 4 months before his assassination, by the way, in which he is concerned that Israel is losing the messaging war, and he wanted to help. More on that in a little bit. But third claim, he's losing Jewish donors. And actually, yes, this is true. I think this is verifiably true, because he wouldn't be lockstep and barrel in support of every single thing that Israel does. And that's fine. But it's not that his support for Israel changed necessarily. It's his support for their messaging, his support for what they're doing, his support for how they're messaging their operations in Gaza, and that he refused to deplatform guys like Tucker Carlson, who he considered a friend and was very anti-Israel at the time and even now. And he's saying, hey, I'm not deplatforming a friend. So if you want to take your money because I'm not deplatforming a friend, that's very different than what JP Sears is saying here. But let's continue in what seems to be the implications here.
Charlie was absolutely pulling back on his support for Israel. Coincidentally, was killed immediately thereafter.
Okay, so here's the other claim. Charlie was pulling back. Was he, though? Just months before his assassination, Charlie debated people at Cambridge University. Take a look at this exchange.
But let me ask you, in the conflict of Israel versus Hamas, who's the good guy?
I believe both Hamas and the Israeli government are evil, but I think also that there is no justification.
Are they equally?
There is no justification for the murder and mutilation of thousands of innocent people and children.
Well, let's
the futile.
Let's zero in on.
There is no justification, Mr. Kirk, for invading hospitals, for bombing innocent populations, and dragging out a war which is damaging Israel and the West's security.
You've made that point, but
Well, it's not a point; it's a moral truth, isn't it?
okay, yeah. It was also a moral truth that the war started because 1,300 Jews were killed and 200 were taken hostage. And when you declare war on Israel, expect a firestorm in reaction. Let me finish. I let you talk. Israel, at its holiest day of the calendar year besides Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, Samat Torah, the 50-year anniversary of the Six-Day War. On Shabbat, Hamas invaded Israel, deciding to go recklessly to music concerts, to homes, to kibbutzes, and taking 200 plus hostages. They knew what they were doing. In one of the most cloistered urban environments on the planet, 2 million people live in a place where it's impossible to wage war. Impossible. Where they wear civilian clothing, they violate every tenet of the Geneva Convention, and the IDF, when they do something right, they get no credit. When they do life-saving surgeries of a Gazan child, they get no credit. When they drop leaflets, they get no credit. But when they happen to bomb a place where they are operating their military from, which we now know from third-party verified sources, hundreds of Hamas military operations are in mosques, schools, and hospitals. I'm sorry, the country where they were living in relative peace on October 6th, that all of a sudden we had a war and Hamas started the war. And I don't see people that were really upset about the 2 million Germans that were killed in World War II, civilians. A tragic truth of war is that civilians die. I don't like it and you don't like it. And they brought it upon themselves. The only operation and entity to blame is the leadership of Hamas, not the Israeli government, for fighting this defensive war after they were invaded.
Now, that's not even 4 months before he is assassinated. Now, did something change over those last 4 months? Maybe. Maybe something changed. I don't know. But I do know that just the day before Charlie's assassination, he recorded a podcast in which he defended Israel yet again in the war on Gaza. Now, people bring up, well, he had this interview that seemed awkward with Ben Shapiro, but you have to always lean into seemings or look at how uncomfortable he looked, and there's innuendo. But it's clear that throughout that interview, Charlie, interviewing Ben Shapiro, who's going to be pro-Israel, is giving his audience the pro-Israel slant and asking the questions that some of his audience would want to ask. That's how interviews go. That doesn't mean that Charlie has that position. Secondly, it's also obvious in the video that Charlie is sarcastic. Charlie is sarcastic with Ben on whether or not Jews own the media. He was asking Ben to help his audience navigate the difficult topic. It does not mean he was distancing himself from Israel. But let's even say some of this evidence exists. Let's even grant that maybe Charlie Kirk was distancing himself from Israel, and that may or may not have anything to do with his assassination. So let's say that maybe that's the case. Sears' contention here isn't about the Jews or people attacking him over Erika Kirk's assassination. It is that Erika herself is now on the take from the Jews. That's the implication. If all of this is true, then Erika is the one that's on the take from the Jews. Then Erika is the one that's in on it. Then Erika has an issue here. That is the implication. So when he says, well, I'm not here to blast a grieving widow, well, you're kind of here to imply that Erika is the issue. And you know what? Let's let him do it in his own words.
Now, the weird thing about Erika Kirk, as she steps in to apparently carry Charlie's legacy forward, she's not carrying that part of his legacy forward. She seemingly is much more all about Israel. And then seemingly people who are all about Israel see Erika Kirk and say, well, we're all about Erika Kirk. Perhaps it's not so genuine. Perhaps it's just because, well, now she's very much supporting my cause, better than Charlie was at the end. So questioning Erika Kirk is to question Israel, and we don't do that. That's where free speech ends.
Oh, you catch that? Remember, the promise was no character assassinations, but he brings up Seth Dillon very specifically. And this is the people, these are the type of people he's alluding to here. Well, perhaps this isn't so genuine. Perhaps she is just more pro my cause than Charlie Kirk was at the end. And so that's the real reason why we're supporting Erika Kirk. So, in other words, Seth Dillon might be not so genuine. Really, it's just because Erika is supporting the cause of Israel better than Charlie is that Seth says you mocked the wrong woman. So do you see the sleight of hand here? Remember, at the beginning, no character assassination.
Let me character assassinate you. No.
JP can have the opinions that he wants. And people who claim that free speech is on the line when a comedian is roasted over a bad taste joke don't actually understand what free speech is anyway. But he's playing a game of obfuscation, doing the very thing he said he wouldn't do. Why? Well, I'm not so sure. Maybe he's not even aware that he's doing it. After all, I'm not going to come after him. I just call balls and strikes, and I wouldn't want to character assassinate anybody.